Number 10. The Little Albert Show. Imagine this. A sweet, wobbly baby, completely unaware that he's about to star in a psychology experiment so bizarre it would make a horror director nod in approval. Welcome to the world of John B. Watson and his infamous Little Albert experiment from the 1920s. Albert was just a baby, minding his own business, when scientists decided to teach him to fear something as harmless as a fluffy white rat. How, you ask? By pairing the sight of the rat with a loud, terrifying noise. Every time Albert reached out to touch Mr. Fluff, the researchers banged a metal bar behind his head. Naturally, he screamed. Naturally, he learned to hate soft, fuzzy things. Fast forward a few weeks, or maybe minutes, depending on how quickly babies forget things, but science apparently didn't care. And Albert wasn't just scared of rats. No. He developed fears of all things white and fluffy. White rabbit? Panic. Santa Claus beard? Run. Cotton balls? Forget about it. This experiment basically proved that phobias could be conditioned into a human, or at least into a human baby who didn't sign a consent form because, he was 3 months old. The irony here, Watson thought he was revealing fundamental truths about human learning when really he just traumatized an innocent child for curiosity and a couple of papers. Today, the ethics committee would throw a fit so big it would create its own minor phobia. Basically, little Albert became a real-life proof that science can be creepy when no one is considering whether you're allowed to scare a baby. And somewhere in the annals of psychological history, a baby cries and a white rat shudders. Number 9. Operation Midnight Clown. Okay, let's get weirder. Ever heard of scientists drugging people to watch them hallucinate while being tickled, poked, or threatened? That's basically Operation Midnight Clown, a series of secret experiments during the Cold War era. The CIA wanted to see if LSD could make spies more suggestible, more malleable, basically like human Play-Doh. So they started handing out hallucinogens like free candy, except it wasn't candy. It was chemicals that would make you question whether your cat was secretly plotting against you. Volunteers, often unaware they were participating in a study, were dosed with LSD and then subjected to bizarre situations. Flashing lights, loud noises, fake interrogations, even a clown sometimes. Because, fear is best tested in tight, fluorescent makeup. Some participants reportedly believed they were being tortured, teleported, or transported to another dimension. The CIA concluded that mind control was theoretically possible. The rest of us conclude human brains under hallucinogens plus paranoia plus flashing lights equals literal nightmare fuel. The takeaway? Your neurons are delicate. Your sense of reality is fragile. And if a stranger offers you a research pill, it might be safer to politely decline. Operation Midnight Clown wasn't about advancing human understanding. It was a reminder that curiosity plus government funding equals existential terror for some poor soul. And somewhere in history, a man is still sure the ceiling is watching him.
Number 8. Monster cages of isolation. Ever wonder what happens if you stick a person alone in a cage for weeks with nothing but 4 walls, a mattress, and their own thoughts? Scientists in the mid-20th century did. It's called sensory deprivation research, and it's as fun as it sounds. Volunteers were strapped into isolation tanks, or darkened rooms, sometimes for days on end. Initially, it's peaceful. No noise, no bright lights, no distractions. Your brain says, cool, meditation time. Then it panics. Suddenly, shadows start to move, walls start whispering, and your thoughts become your worst enemy. The goal was noble, at least on paper. Understand how the brain works without sensory input. The result? People hallucinated, lost track of time, and in some cases reported mild to major psychotic episodes. Basically, your brain is like a toddler left alone in a grocery store. If nothing's happening, it starts making things up. And some of those things are terrifying. So yes, scientists were basically testing what it feels like to slowly descend into your own mind. The irony? People volunteered for science, thinking it might be relaxing. Instead, they got a front row seat to the creepy carnival inside their own heads. And the moral is clear, Never underestimate your neuron's ability to throw a haunted house party without your permission.
Number 7. The Monster Study. Picture this. It's 1939, and you're a kid who just learned how to talk. Now imagine that some so-called scientists decide your speech is the perfect testing ground for psychological trauma. That's exactly what happened in Iowa and what later got called the Monster Study. Researchers wanted to see if stuttering could be induced in children. Yes, induced. Intentionally. Orphans were split into 2 groups. One group received positive reinforcement, basically, hey, great job talking. The other got the scarier treatment. Constant criticism, correction, and a heavy-handed, your voice is wrong, say it differently. Kids who had no speech issues began to develop stuttering, while some who already stuttered worsened. Can you imagine the sheer terror of thinking every word you speak is a trap waiting to catch you? These poor children didn't sign consent forms. They were told they were in school or therapy. The researchers concluded that negative reinforcement could damage speech, which, shockingly, is exactly what parents and bullies had been figuring out for centuries without lab coats. But the horrifying part isn't the finding. It's that real kids were the experiment, living through stress and humiliation, all in the name of curiosity. The Monster Study was a reminder that some science is basically cruelty wrapped in fancy words and paper. And somewhere in the Midwest, a child still nervously clears their throat.
Number 6. The syphilis experiment that shouldn't exist. The infamous Tuskegee syphilis study, an experiment so morally bankrupt it could headline a horror anthology. Between 1932 and 1972, hundreds of black men in Alabama were misled, told they were receiving free medical care while actually being observed as their syphilis infection ran wild. No treatment was given, even after penicillin became a known cure. Nope, just observation, documentation, and a side of blatant human cruelty. The idea? Scientists wanted to study the natural progression of untreated syphilis. The reality? They weaponized ignorance, trust, and racism in the most horrifying way. Participants suffered, spread disease, and even died, all while believing they were in a safe study. And the ethics of it? Oh, there weren't any. The experiment didn't just push boundaries, it obliterated them. Tuskegee stands as a stark, grotesque reminder science divorced from morality is not just creepy, it's deadly. And in case you thought your own medical checkup was boring, just remember, somewhere, someone's idea of human study once involved watching people die in slow motion. Welcome to science history's darkest hall. Number 5. The Stanford Prison Reenactment of Madness. You think your office job is stressful? Imagine being randomly assigned the role of guard in a fake prison, while your fellow human gets the role of prisoner, and the experiment leader encourages cruelty. That's exactly what Philip Zimbardo pulled in 1971 in what we now call the Stanford Prison Experiment. The goal was to study how quickly ordinary people would adopt abusive behaviors when given power and authority. Within hours, the guards became tyrannical, and the prisoners broke down psychologically. One participant had to be released after just a few days because of extreme emotional distress. Zimbardo had to shut it down after only 6 days, even though the plan was 2 weeks. Moral of the story? Give people uniform power and a tiny bit of anonymity, and they might become miniature dictators overnight. The experiment was so intense, it basically gave psychology students PTSD case studies without consent. And somewhere, in a dusty archive, a guard is still deciding whether to yell at a stapler for being insubordinate.
Number 4. Little Albert and the Loud Noises. Imagine being a baby and suddenly discovering that the world is terrifying. Not in the usual I stubbed my toe way, but in the everything is a monster waiting to scare you kind of way. That's what happened to little Albert, a 9-month-old subjected to John B. Watson's infamous experiment in 1920. The goal? To prove that fear could be conditioned. Every time Albert played with a cute white rat, Watson would make a loud, terrifying noise behind him. Guess what happened?
The baby started crying at the sight of the rat, and eventually at all fluffy things, rabbits, dogs, even Santa Claus masks. Basically, they trained a child to live in constant terror for the sake of behavioral psychology. Albert didn't consent, and worse, we don't even know what happened to him afterward. He might have grown up fearing all fuzzy animals for the rest of his life. It's a textbook example of science taking a hard left turn into nightmare territory. While Watson proved a psychological theory, he also proved that human experimentation can cross the line from curiosity into cruelty in about 3 seconds flat. So, next time you see a cute kitten video, thank your lucky stars you weren't little Albert.
Number 3. MK Ultra mind games. Oh, the CIA really outdid themselves here. In the 1950s and 60s, the United States launched MK Ultra, a mind control experiment so insane it reads like a sci-fi conspiracy theory. Participants were often unaware they were in an experiment. Sometimes they were patients, sometimes students, sometimes people just unlucky enough to exist. The goal? To explore whether humans could be manipulated with drugs, hypnosis, or sensory deprivation. Picture someone dropping LSD in your coffee without warning, while bright lights flash and you're forced into isolation for hours. Now imagine documenting every tiny mental breakdown for analysis. Yep, that happened. Some subjects went insane, some attempted suicide, and the government was gleefully taking notes. Basically, MK Ultra turned ordinary humans into guinea pigs for psychological torture masquerading as research. The truly terrifying part? It wasn't just one experiment. It was a sprawling program spanning hospitals, universities, and secret labs. Somewhere in those dusty files are people who still wonder if someone else is in their head. Which, if you think about it, is exactly the kind of paranoia the experiment was designed to create.
Number 2. The sleep deprivation hellscape. Sleep is supposed to be a safe space, a time when your body and brain hit the reset button. But scientists, in their infinite wisdom, decided that maybe the best way to study human limits was to take sleep away entirely. Enter Randy Gardner, a high school student in 1964 who stayed awake for 11 days straight for a sleep deprivation study. Sure, it sounds like, I pulled an all-nighter for finals, but imagine 264 hours without rest. He experienced memory lapses, hallucinations, mood swings, and eventually began losing touch with reality itself. Scientists watched. They documented every twitch of the eye, every slurred sentence, every moment of creeping madness. Sleep deprivation studies have since shown that prolonged sleeplessness can be lethal, cause permanent cognitive damage, and turn you into a drooling, paranoid zombie. But hey, Gardner survived and science learned something. Moral of the story, human endurance is impressive, but also some experiments just feel like paying to watch someone slowly implode for science's amusement.
Number 1. The Stanford Prison Experiment. Imagine signing up for a 2-week psychology study and ending up trapped in a real-life nightmare. That's what happened in 1971 when Philip Zimbardo recruited college students to simulate a prison environment. Half became guards, half became prisoners. The catch? No one thought the guards would actually turn into sadistic little tyrants. Within days, the guards started humiliating and psychologically torturing the prisoners. Prisoners developed severe anxiety, depression, and emotional breakdowns. One had to be released early because he was literally crying on the floor, rocking back and forth, begging to leave. Zimbardo, the lead researcher, watched it all unfold and only ended the experiment after 6 days, half the intended time. It's terrifying because it wasn't just a study, it was a social experiment gone wild. It proved that normal people can commit cruelty when given power, but at the cost of traumatizing dozens of young adults. And while the ethics committees of today would faint at the idea, back then it was groundbreaking research. Basically, the lesson is, never underestimate what a pair of khaki pants and a whistle can do to a human psyche.